Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bolivia Political Crossroads. Hello, Ernesto. Good morning.
Hello, Paul. How are you doing?
Doing good.
How was this morning for you? Good.
So far, so good. It's
good.
Saturday. Saturday is the weekend. We're 8 days, I guess, from the elections. So
exactly
coming down to the wire. And I'm excited. I'm sure everybody's excited. If you think about it, I don't know if you reflected on this. It's something that dawned on me that we kind of started this whole thing, the podcast, with the objective of of covering political developments from the time Abel resigned and fled the country until the elections. And who thought I was going to end up being 37 episodes long?
That is long.
Yeah. But
this is number 37.
This is 37. Here we are.
Wow, that's 37 weeks.
Yeah. Well, we had a pause. We had a pause during the worst of the coronavirus. At least the peak here in Santa Cruz, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, we who knows? Maybe we would have hit 50, or we would be by the time the elections. But anyway, so I guess with the elections coming up, the big news is there's a bunch of stuff going on. That there's new polls or surveys out, and I don't think there's any surprises there. We've seen with what I don't know if we mentioned. I guess we did mention this last week that Áñez is out, and we've seen the voter. That's definitely helped Mesa. Where's the screen sharing here? I've got the. Here we go. So if we look here, can you see that?
Yep.
All right. So if we go back to when Áñez was still in the race, when's this from? This is from. I think it's from July, if I'm not mistaken.
June.
June. If I unclick it here. Here we go. Oh, Jesus, February.
February, yes.
Was it from pre-pandemic, let's say. But this kind of Áñez definitely dropped a little bit. But I remember, there was a time where she was kind of neck and neck with Mesa, if you believe the polls. And
but it's very good that you're doing the comparison, because look, right now we have what? The Arce has what, 31 right now.
Mm-hmm. This is from February. So Arce hasn't changed. He hasn't gone up or down.
Right.
And
that's interesting.
If you we'll move along to this. This one's from. This says this was taken from between the 3rd and the 7th of September. Also before Áñez was out, before she'd announced it. And if we look here, we all know she was doing terribly because of. I think most people agree with the corruption scandals during the pandemic, and so yeah. After she drops out, big surprise. If you look here, she's got 7, almost 8. Mesa's got 19. Arce is still right around 30, right? And well, we can mention Camacho because he's a strong third with 10. And they're simple math, if you want to look at it that way. 19 that Mesa had plus Áñez's 8 gives you just about 27, right? So not that everybody who was going to vote for Áñez is going to vote for Mesa, but if we look at the progression of these polls, it kind of looks that way. Although Camacho's also picked up a few points, right?
3. From the beginning, from the first one you showed, 3, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
4. Yeah, I think it was 9.
Yeah, he
didn't grow that much.
Back in February, 9, almost 9.5, up 9. To. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you look at percentages, it's almost 50% for him. Mm-hmm. No, but anyway. In the big picture, it's definitely not enough. Not enough to make Carlos Mesa lose any sleep. That's what I think.
Right.
And again, Arce is still, he's got a few more points. Like, and this one came from, this last one is from Jubileo y the UMSA, the university in La Paz.
Right.
If I recall, the polls that were the most accurate or closest to calling things last October were also from Jubileo, right? Although, again, right, it's hard to say with election results that were meddled with. So anyway, but yeah, it does. According to this, it's going to a second round, and well, I think we all know how that'll go.
The votos válidos. Do you have at hand the votos válidos?
The votos válidos.
Votos válidos.
How many each? Right. How many are in the padrón?
No. This chart you're looking at right now includes the votos blancos, nulos, and indecisos, right?
But it's got
which is
separated.
9. Right. This is which was 11 plus 9. You're talking about what?
21%.
Right. What they do with the votos válidos, and I think it's within your chart. It has to be. They erase these 3: the blancos, nulos, and indecisos, and they distribute them. And they have a technique to distribute them, and then. Right. Yeah, they have the votos válidos there. I think you may have that. If you have it at hand, it's interesting.
No, I don't. I just pulled this up from the newspaper this morning. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
But I know what you're talking about. That the way they to give a simple example, I guess, is where, let's say, you take 100%, and then let's say candidate A has 50% and candidate B has 30%. That's right. 80, right? And then you've got, let's say, 20% is the blancos, nulos, and indecisos, undecided. So right, they get rid of those, and then they take the voting pool as 80 out of that 80%, let's say. And so the guy who had 50% suddenly, if you divide 50 into 80 and not 50 into 100 anymore, then he's got 62.5. And the guy who had 30% divided into 80 has 37.5. Right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. So in the votos válidos, this guy is close to be a president.
Right.
The distance is 1.3%.
But if you take out, okay, but you're adding up the blancos and the nulos as well, right?
See, I don't know if they do that.
It's the blanco. It's the blancos and nulos. That's according to what, and we talked about this a little bit, and I watched Valverde talk about it and give a very quick, precise explanation. So I'm kind of copying the example he gave. But 5.4 plus 6.3 is going to give you, I should be able to do that in my head, 11.7. So if we take out 11.7 from 100, then 11.7, 88.3. So if we divide 33.6 by 88.3, that gives, I would say, 38%.
Well, actually, what is happening is I'm sending it to you. I don't know if you can. Yeah, you can see it.
Are you sending it on WhatsApp or?
Yeah, I just sent you in WhatsApp. It's the same poll that you're looking at right now, except that this is the votos válidos only. And
okay.
Yeah.
Let me open it up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Oh, hold on a second. Did the screen sharing? I think the screen sharing came off here. Put it back up here. All right. And now we go.
Exact. Oh no, that's the same one as before.
Yeah, I'm trying to. There we go. Got it. Okay. Here we go.
Okay. Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Got my wonderful Bolivian internet here. Come on.
You guys, you're at the store right now?
Yeah, I'm at the Alemana. There we go. Although I've got good internet at the house now. I can do this from the house now. Didn't tell you that.
Oh, great.
That's the big news this week.
Yep, that's excellent.
There we go.
Okay, there you
You
go.
guys, you can see
That's
this?
the votos válidos. Yep, I can see it clearly. So that's 42.9, that's almost 43. And the other one is 34.2. So that's almost 34 if you round it up.
But
So if you're in
what I think they did here is they added in the indecisos, the undecideds.
Yeah, that's what they did.
Which they shouldn't do because, well, you don't know if an undecided is going to leave it in blanco or nulo, but I don't think so. Maybe a small percentage of those. But give it.
But I think these people do have a logical proceeding to do this.
All right, it does say there. It says no incluye blanco, nulo, indecisos.
Right.
Right. So
what they do is because they take those out and they distribute them logically between the different candidates, and this is how it ends up.
Right.
Okay. So you end up with Luis Arce 42.9 and the other one 34.2.
Well, hold on.
Almost Arce president in the first round.
Let's see. 100 minus 11.7. It was 9.9 indecisos, right? 78.4. Right. Arce had, I'm going to go back to the other one here, 33.6. 33.6 divided by 78.4. That gives him exactly that number. So no, they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything technical here. They just took all of the indecisos out and they didn't distribute them evenly, because what I get here is I get for Arce, I'm getting 42.857, which rounds up to 42.9. And I'm going to assume the same thing for Mesa.
They never distributed that. They just took it out.
They just took it out. They just took it out.
All right.
And so in the case, let me just make sure, 11.7 minus 9.9. Oops. 7 minus 9.9, 78.4. So 26.8 divided by 78.4 gives Mesa 34.18 or 34.2, which is, yep. So yeah, they just wiped it out. I don't, there's no way you can convince me that those 9.9 indecisos are all going to leave it blanco or nulo.
Okay.
You know,
where are they going? What's your guess? We can guess right now because we're so close. We better guess.
Well,
they're not going to Fernando Camacho's, right?
No, I don't think they're going to cheat.
No.
Split. Okay.
I don't think they're going to Carlos Mesa because it's not a sin to vote for Mesa, or is it?
In Santa Cruz, it sure as hell is.
In Santa Cruz, probably. Yep.
Right. And Santa Cruz is a huge chunk of the voting pool. We've talked about this too. We mentioned last week with Pedro, the what do you call that? The people who are ashamed, right? They're not going to tell you they're voting for the MAS, but they're going to vote for the MAS.
Right. But I think those votes are either for Arce and for Mesa. That's correct. Okay.
My inclination is to say more of them are for. I think more of them are for Mesa than for Arce.
You think so?
Maybe that's just my bias.
Well,
that's what I want. That's what I want it to
be. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. I know this is very colloquial, but it's interesting anyhow. I had a couple of painters working in my house this week, and I had to go pay them because I didn't have cash that moment. I had to go to the bank with them, so I drove with them. And in the middle of the drive of the ride, I started talking to them, and when I touched the political issue, you know, I just asked them, you know, blank, what do you think, you know? And they said, oh, this is the main guy says, I think people are going to vote for the MAS. It's a painter speaking with me, you know. I mean, but no, I mean, he'd never even wondered whether there was another vote, whether there's the possibility that somebody else could win. It was just like an obvious thing, you know. I'm going to vote for the MAS, and that's it, you know. And I think he's going to win because the rest are spread in many pieces or something like that. That was the answer, you know. But he never thought that there was a possibility that some other candidate could win, and he wasn't ashamed of saying that he was voting for the MAS, which is the point that most struck me, because I thought he was going to hide it, you know. Never did it. He just said it, you know. And very interesting, because
I'm gonna take this down.
That speaks about a different Santa Cruz, definitely, you know. I'm not used to that Santa Cruz yet because it took too many years for that to occur. And yeah, people are no longer embarrassed or fear shame because they're going to vote for the Mas. At least many of them are not. My painter was not, definitely.
That's interesting. I do think that the Mas is. I consider that I have more exposure to the I don't know what you want to call them, the peripheral areas, or the areas that aren't inside, the downtown or in the main part of the city. And
right.
I don't think I'm as out of touch as a large chunk of the population that lives closer in, let's say. And the Mas is definitely still probably a majority in those areas, but I do think they have lost a lot of ground. Maybe not enough to lose an election. We take, Santa Cruz is a large city and a huge percentage of the voting population. But I remember back in October and November with the protests after the fraud, and there were truckloads. I live on one of the streets on one of the main avenues on the Alemana, and there were truckloads of people coming in. When I remember at these cabildos and stuff, and truckloads of people in come in buses coming from these areas. I don't remember exactly how. I remember where they were coming from, but whether they were chanting or saying something, or but there were a significant number of people coming from farther outside the city to these protests, the anti-Masista protests or anti-Evo protests. But again, that's just what I could see. I don't want to ramble too much about it, but
go ahead.
No, there's definitely, Mas is still a presence. Now I live in Satélite Norte. I don't live in Alemana anymore. My business is still here, but my work is still here. But you go to Satélite, and there's on the main street, for example, there's this on the main avenue of Satélite Norte, which for people who don't know Santa Cruz or don't know, Satélite Norte is what you could call like an emerging suburb of Santa Cruz. And it's always been very Masista. On the main street, there's a daycare, a municipal daycare that was called Evo Morales Daycare, Evo Morales Jaime Daycare. And as soon as he was gone, they took those letters down, and now it's the district whatever number daycare. It's not Evo Morales Daycare now. I went to Sehip to get my ID card a couple of weeks ago, and the Sehip office is inside a shopping center that's not on the main street. It's weird. It's this big shopping center, and it's all dirt roads around it, but it's a shopping center. It even has escalators. They're not working, but they're there. And the shopping center is called Centro Comercial Juan Evo Morales Jaime, and those letters are still there, and they're still up. And so, two things: it's a private shopping center. It's not run by the state, like the daycare is, and it's also not on a main avenue where everybody, the people who are only going to Satélite for some reason, are not going to see it. It's for the people who live in Satélite to see it. And so the Mas hasn't gone away, man.
No, definitely. But see, we are touching something very interesting here, and nobody points it out, I think, clearly. Since the vote for Camacho is not a hidden vote, because it's not, we know it. Mm-hmm. In La Paz, it's non-existent because it's not hidden. It's just he doesn't attract anybody in La Paz or in the other departments of Bolivia. My feeling is that I bet that most of the hidden vote is in Santa Cruz. And when you take the whole pie, 7 million voters, who is hiding the votes? Where are they hidden? My feeling is that they're hidden in Santa Cruz, because in other places they don't have the reason to hide them. It's here that the people hide.
That's an excellent point.
It's shameful to vote for for Carlos Mesa.
No, you look at
Or
La Paz.
even
La Paz has 51% voting for Mas, according to the latest polls. And so
Exactly.
there's no shame there, you know.
No, there's no shame to vote for the Mas there. No, they're very proud of doing that. And there's no shame in voting for Mesa also in La Paz, because
Though
the people vote for-
strangely, he's very low.
yeah, but you know, he's low because his vote is not in the outskirts. He's in downtown.
Mhm.
And in downtown La Paz, people are mesistas, you know, and nobody will hide that, you know. I think they'll just say that they're voting for Mesa. The hiders are the Cruceños, because the Cruceños feel guilty about saying I'm voting for Mesa because that's treason against Mr. Camacho. And they also hide, some of them hide the fact that they're masistas because, you know, Evo Morales has done too many wrong things in the latter times, you know. He's done all sorts of stuff. So there may be some people that are ashamed of that. But basically, I think Santa Cruz are the hiders, you know, they're hiding what they're thinking. And yeah, I just think that's important to bring it out, because it's where we live is where the votes are being hidden. And you're right, maybe most of them are for Carlos Mesa. I'm not sure of that, but it's probably, it has a sense, a logical sense that it's that way. So interesting, yes, very interesting, the polls.
If we take half of those undecideds, if we just split it down the middle, when I limited it, when I was doing those calculations and just took out the undecideds, it put Arce at, I think it was 38%, which is still not enough to avoid a runoff, right? Again, it's worth repeating because a lot of people forget and don't know this, that to avoid a runoff, you need one of two things. You need to have 50% plus one, and there's no runoff, or you need to have above 40% and at least a 10% margin above the second place candidate.
That's correct.
Which is, and so Arce's, if you take out those 10% undecided, that puts Arce up at about 38, which is uncomfortably close. But again, it also gives Mesa, it doesn't give him the 10-point margin, it gives him an 8-point margin, still under 40%. If we were to divide those undecideds, let's say between Mesa and Arce evenly, I guess it wouldn't really change things.
Right.
But you know,
because the distance would be the same. The distance between them both would be the same.
Sure. Now, if we look at Camacho in his 16%, I wonder how many people last minute, you know, even in the polls, you know, people say, oh, I'm going to vote for Camacho. I'm going to vote for Camacho. In Santa Cruz, nobody's ashamed to say it. But
oh no, they're very proud of that.
What I do wonder about, I think Camacho's got around 34, 35% in Santa Cruz, right?
38 according to Jubileo.
Okay, thank you. 38%. I do wonder how many of those people that, even when they call her, they go to the door to door, they call her, however they're doing this, they say, I'm going to vote for Camacho. At the last minute, you know, nobody said it's not illegal to lie in a poll or an encuesta, you know?
Sure,
so
sure.
How many of those people are going to end up voting for Mesa?
Yep. This is a good point.
This is a very good point. Here's something we didn't talk about before we started recording, and I think it's an interesting topic. Some people say that Santa Cruz is decisive for this election. And if you take out of the 7 million voters, I think Santa Cruz has somewhere around 1 million of those, at least. Now, then other people say, no, look at La Paz, and Oruro and Cochabamba, you know, cities where Mesa is very low and Arce is quite a bit higher. There's a much higher margin. But the thing is those are percentages. Those aren't number of voters. So you can't compare Oruro that has like 400,000 people or 400,000 population and 250,000 that are going to vote to a city that's got 4 times that, you know, in terms of number of voters. You just, it's not, Oruro's not going to decide the election. nor is Cochabamba. But I can see the argument being made with La Paz, because La Paz and Santa Cruz have very similar populations in terms of size and in terms of how many are going to vote. But yeah, there's, I guess the question I have for you, do you think Santa Cruz is that decisive? You know, let's say, I don't know, let's say Camacho surprises everybody and drops out. I don't think it's going to happen, but let's just be for a hypothetical exercise here.
Many of those would end up voting for Mesa, of course.
They're going to vote for Mesa, and that is,
right,
in my mind, if you look at the polls the way they are now, unquestionably going to alter or affect the outcome of the election, or it's going to create a greater sense of security for those that are worried and don't want the Mas to win, and that's not going to happen, right? I do think that Santa Cruz is decisive, you know, in that respect, and that a lot of, and I don't know how many people, I don't want to sound belittling, but how many people are intelligent enough to be able to understand that? You know, I'm not saying you have to vote for one person or the other person, but at the end of the day, that'd be an interesting poll to go to the Camachistas and say, what do you care more about? Do you care more about being loyal to Camacho and giving him your vote, or do you care more about the Mas not taking power? There's so many ways to analyze it and think about it.
That leads to a point, to the second point of this conversation, which is, it goes around the article I just wrote in Facebook, right?
Tell us what that article is.
Yeah,
in summary.
It's hard to understand Santa Cruz, I think, for most people in Bolivia. Definitely, you know, the people that don't live in Santa Cruz, I don't think they have all. Again, it's not belittling them. Belittle them. It's just that in Bolivia, you don't have too many people that write about analysis about politics in Santa Cruz, local politics, right? I think people in general talk about politics in Bolivia, but you don't find analysts or political scientists that are talking about La Paz's politics or Oruro's politics, or in this case, Santa Cruz's politics. Whereas in the States, there are people that are specialists, you know, people that only know about Illinois politics, you know, and this guy can tell you anything about what's happening there. But in Bolivia, it's not the case. People are generalists. They speak about Bolivian politics. But you need to understand what's happening within a department in order to understand in order to respond to your question. And I think it would be highly valuable if there would be political scientists that research about politics in Santa Cruz. But since there aren't any, then we can give it a shot. And this is my shot. Santa Cruz, when I just came to Santa Cruz, this is 2004, I stumbled into someone that was very important in my life in Santa Cruz, in the sense that he gave me a light that I didn't have then. When I arrived here to live, I found that a very hostile environment in certain areas, not in the whole of Santa Cruz, but when I was within a group of people, certain group of people, I definitely felt like I was the enemy there, you know? And I had never felt that way in my life, in my entire life. I'm a 61-year-old, 62-year-old guy now. And I lived in the States many years. I studied there, and I never felt that way. Never, you know? The States was like a glass of milk for me. It was a very interesting place and welcoming place to foreigners like myself. Or at least at that time with myself, it was that. But not Santa Cruz. Then I lived away from Bolivia in Lima. I lived like 4 years, and now Lima is just living in La Paz. And I also lived in Korea for like 2 years, and that was a whole different ball game because I was there as an ambassador, right? And I wasn't a resident there. But when I came to Santa Cruz, all of a sudden I found that I was the enemy here in certain groups. And I felt uncomfortable. I didn't know what happened there. But it's not easy. I mean, it's not difficult. After 5 minutes, you know what happens there. You know, there's a group of people in Santa Cruz that just hate, literally hate people that live in the highlands, you know,
Hmm.
people, what they call collas, you know, where
Yep.
people that live in Santa Cruz and Cochabamba, Oruro, Potosí, Chuquisaca. And it's a hatred that's within them, you know, it's hard to understand it,
No,
but that's the way
I don't,
they
I don't
grew
want
up.
to cut you off or cut your story short,
Uh-huh.
but just to add something there from my own personal experience. I'm not Koya, I'm not, but I
Mhm.
have an outside perspective that I think some people here are less secretive or shameful to express their true feelings. And I've been in
Right,
certain social settings with educated um, people that are from, let's say, middle upper class that have
right,
no problem saying in a social
right,
setting in a group of many people that
right,
they hate collas, and they'll
right,
say it in front of me. They wouldn't say it if there was a colla sitting there, depending on who it was, perhaps. But so,
right,
you know, for anybody who's listening to this and thinks that you're exaggerating or how can you know that, you
right.
know, I've had people say it
That's
in
the way
front
it
of
works.
me.
That's the
I've
way
had
it
people
works.
say
Yeah,
it in front of me with
yeah,
many people around, and there was no shame. So go ahead,
right.
continue.
No, there's no shame because see, and there's something that people don't say that, you know, what I'm going to say right now is not said all the time. It's not that they hate Highlanders. It's not the problem is not with collas in general. It's basically a very racial thing, you know. They hate Indians. They hate indigenous people. They don't want to say it, so they say, "Oh, we hate collas," you know. But in the end, basically, what it is a hatred. It's a very racist thing, you know. It's we hate Indians in this land, you know, because we're not Indians, you know. That's basically the message there. Um, and that's terrible for a place, you know. When you go to live to a place like that, you say, "Wow, you know, this is South Africa, 1964," you know,
It's
because
it's it's
it's
all
revisiting South Africa.
it's always been one of the, I don't know how you say it, like one of the rocks in my shoe in terms of living here.
Yeah,
One of the things
right.
that,
It has to be because it's a retrograde thing, you know. It's like apartheid, you know, and they wish they could be apartheid, you know. They wish there would be a land like in South Africa in the 60s and 70s, right? They would draw a line and say, here's the indigenous people, and here's where we are, the white, quote unquote, because they're not even white, but that's not the issue. So that's in order to understand Santa Cruz politics, you have to understand that that we're speaking about, what we're speaking about, translates into a political action. Okay,
yeah.
it's not just there. It's not a sociological thing. It's a political thing, and it's a political thing that has been developing in Santa Cruz. I don't know since when, but I know that it became deeper and deeper ingrained in the minds of the political actors in Santa Cruz ever since the late 50s, more in the 60s, and even more in the 70s.
Mhm.
Okay, and basically there's a separation of a secession movement underneath. It's not blatant, it's not said, but underneath in this group there's the wish that someday there would be a separation between Santa Cruz and the rest of the country.
Mhm.
And on and off they have been in the limelight. They established the Nación Camba, which is the Nación of the Cruceños, supposedly the pure blood Cruceños. And
Have you seen this sticker? Sorry, that I've seen this on people's cars that says
uh,
"Este es mi país." This is my country, and it shows just the
yeah,
departments
Santa Cruz.
of Pando, Beni, and Pando,
Uh,
the three eastern states, and
right.
that's a very
Yeah.
and to put it
So
on your car, you know, this is my
this,
country.
right. So this is what has been happening here. And politically, it was it went up. The temperature went up ever since Evo Morales became president, because that's when racism became evident in Bolivia. Became the thing to speak about,
Hmm.
because Evo is also racist, you know, as much as they are,
Hmm.
right?
True.
Because Evo's position is not a leftist, he's not a Marxist. I have a friend who backs Evo because he's a Marxist, but he's way off, you know. That's not Marxism. I did study Marxism a lot in college in the States, very well, you know.
Mm.
That's not Marxism. That's just racism, period, you know, because the base of them, the base, the people that are the basis of the mass are the Chapare people. And the Chapare people, man, they are capitalists up to the end. They're drug traffickers and capitalists, you know. and they don't pay taxes. So that's basically the main issue about the Republicans in the U.S. is taxes. Well, go to the Chapare, because in Chapare nobody pays taxes, right? There's no state there. Yeah, that's the love land for all these Republicans.
Pure
that don't
capitalism.
want to pay taxes. Welcome to the Chapare, right? Exactly. So exactly, so that's exactly what happened in 2006. You had a president who was an indigenous guy and a very racist guy, and the reaction was immediate in Santa Cruz. This group emerged as the resistance to the
We lost Ernesto.
So when he became president, Evo Morales, he was such a racist, that the reaction came immediately from Santa Cruz. The racists from Santa Cruz had a reason to exist again, So they got together and they started fighting against Evo Morales, the white racists versus the indigenous racists. So they started fighting. And finally, in 2008, they became so strong that this is hard to remember, but it's easy to remember. And I think it's important to point it out. In Latin America, there was a big fight because there was Venezuela with Chavez, and man, he was a pain for the US and for the whole continent. They didn't know what to do with him because it was impossible to get him out of the presidency. He had a lot of backing up. There was Nicaragua with the guy Ortega, and they couldn't get him out. The Cubans started to revive again, the revival of the Cuban communism, because they had been drowned during 40 years, but all of a sudden they have this Chavez and they have Ortega, and now they have this Evo Morales. So all the left was becoming strong in a new version, but it doesn't matter.
And you had Lula. Well, no, Lula, I don't remember how long he was in Brazil.
Yeah,
but I mean, he wasn't so and Brazil's no joke.
Yeah, Brazil's no joke, and they had Argentina, Argentina.
Right, with the Kirchner's. Yeah.
So the whole thing was rotten, and they didn't know what to do. I mean, the states, So all of a sudden, these guys in Bolivia started doing all these stupid things, and Evo Morales was strong as hell, and well, the thing became so bad in 2008 that there almost was a rupture in Bolivia. Santa Cruz being dominated by these extreme rightists, and they had the will to break up the country in two. And there was a lot of speculation at that time, I don't know if you recall, internationally, that Bolivia was at the brink of becoming two countries.
Honestly, I was not. That was at that time. I was not keeping up on things.
Right.
Because of some. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's how it works for everybody. So yes, in 2008, people started in Latin America and in the world, people started making conjectures about Bolivian politics and the possibility of Bolivia breaking up in two, because, quote, we were so different, ones from the others. So this whole theory started running around, and as I said, important people started thinking about this or giving opinions. I recall that there was an important article from the Wall Street Journal. I think it still probably is in the internet. And the U.S. took a decision there that was very interesting. They changed an ambassador. I think Greenlee left, or I don't know if it was Greenlee, but the ambassador left.
Greenlee came in, or Goldberg came in 2006.
Right, that's probably exactly what happened. I think Greenlee left, and he was replaced by Philip Goldberg. Just when Evo became president, and this whole thing, erupted. Yeah. The only thing that came up to my mind when I read his story, his bio, is that he was coming from having had an experience in former Yugoslavia, where the countries broke up, and it wasn't only myself. Some people thought about that and wrote about that in Bolivia. And felt that the mission of this guy here was to help the breaking up of Bolivia, because the U.S. couldn't get rid of Evo Morales through other democratic means, because if you called an election there, he would have won again 10 or 20 times, So they were thinking about some strategy in order to do that. That's when Philip Goldberg came here with that biography behind him. of having been an ambassador or part of the U.S. embassy in Yugoslavia when Yugoslavia broke in pieces in the war. So some people thought that, what are these guys up to here? And all of a sudden, you had Bolivia at the brink of war, of a civil war, and almost getting divided. In 2008, it happened. In 2008, this whole thing stopped because Evo Morales took care of the thing. They killed a couple of them in the Hotel Las Americas, and that was it, And then he started two processes that were unjust, probably so, but it stopped them. It stopped the whole group. One of the guys that was
he put a lot of people in jail or
right
the country.
Exactly. One of the figures that was in jail was 10 years in jail. He was a 29-year-old guy that was jailed for 10 years, and he remained in jail until he was Matkovic. He is a candidate right now from the political party of Mr. Camacho.
And his father is ex-prefecto, right, of Santa Cruz.
From ADN, right. So this is the same group of people. The people that wanted to divide the country in 2008 and that were persecuted politically during the whole time Evo Morales was president are these people. The main people that are behind Camacho have that line of thinking. They're the racists in Bolivia, in Santa Cruz. And they're the people that only long the separation of Santa Cruz from Bolivia. And my theory is that, yes, they are seeing this as an opportunity because the moment that Camacho becomes strong in Santa Cruz is the moment that Santa Cruz can, I don't know if encounter the way, but at least search for the way to do what they want, which is separate Santa Cruz from Bolivia. And if they cannot do that, they will probably go at least to federalize Bolivia in two pieces, the Santa Cruz and the rest of Bolivia, and they want to make a federation out of Santa Cruz. I don't know if Santa Cruz, Beni, and Pando, I don't think they're up anymore to that, because if you look at the result of
Pando's masista.
Pando is masista, right? And El Beni is not from the extreme right. Mesa is leading right now the polls there. So basically, the racists are here. The enclave of racism in Bolivia is in Santa Cruz, basically. And I think they're playing their cards now, and they're playing their cards, making a stronghold of them in Santa Cruz, making Mr. Camacho a guy with a lot of votes here, and with the strength fight against the rest of Bolivia, and try in the first place try to fight for a federation, and after they get the federation, maybe separate in the long run. But that's my take here, and I don't know if it's true or not, but there are too many things that lead you to think that, because Camacho never made an effort to become a candidate of Bolivia.
Well, you say that, right? Okay, that it's a very interesting observation, and an interesting thought that he's got no intention. That was basically your what stuck out for me the most, is that he's got no intention.
Right.
I tend to think my take on it is that he's just kind of crazy. He's crazy. I mean, he not crazy in like the sense that he's he's going to go, like a crazy person sitting on a bench and counting pieces of dirt on the ground for 6 hours. Not that kind of crazy, but he's just, he's another kind of crazy. But okay, so if in Creemos, if they win seats in the legislative, right, and if he gets a strong enough third place, which looks like there's a lot of potential for that to happen, he still has, politically, he's still very present, and to be a separatist at the same time. Okay, wait, let's look at this another way. That Creemos is going to have a lot of power in that sense, bargaining power, because you're going to have masistas and mesistas in the legislature fighting, and the tiebreakers are always going to be the Camachistas, right?
Right.
That's the way it looks at this time. And so taking that into account, it's kind of strange, because Mesa is always shit talking the masistas and also the Mesa. He hates them both, you know,
Uh-huh.
he hates them both and probably equally, but in the end, he's going to have to work with them, you know, and they're going to have a very important position in terms of, again, in negotiating power within the government if the elections go that direction, right? So the point I'm making here is, with that kind of position, how can he, or do you think he's playing some kind of long game? I mean, in terms of, you know, because at least in the next 5 years, if assuming, let's say, if Arce takes office, all bets are off. If Mesa takes the office, then he has to play ball, you know, in the legislature at least, and he can benefit greatly from it. At least that's my take. Where if he goes rogue and takes this separatist stance and becomes more vociferous about it, I don't think he's gonna do himself any favors. So
that's a very good point, because you are drawing the scenery as it is. Anybody that has what 13-14% of the assembly has to be powerful, because you are the one who decides the majority, the approval of the laws.
Yeah,
that's if the MAS and the Masistas don't get together and have an agreement in order to govern Bolivia. In which case, a whole different scenery would be drawn up in the political world of Bolivia. But I don't think that will happen.
The MAS is. We've talked about this. The MAS is their modus. How do you say modus operandi? The way they work is to try to fuck over whoever is the opposition, right, all the time.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah,
and I don't think that's going to change. That's
Camacho has one thing to negotiate with. I don't think Camacho is going to back Mesa in approving laws and giving governance to Bolivia because he's a patriot or because they will give him a couple of ministries. I don't think that will happen. I think that if that's the deal, he won't get into the deal and he'll just be in opposition against Mesa, which brings very dark days to Mesa and to the whole of Bolivia, because you only have the Masistas and Camacho throwing rocks at Mesa, and Mesa would probably resign under those circumstances. In 2 or 3 years, he'd be out. That's one scenario. The other scenario, and I think this is where we're heading at, is that Camacho being so strong in Santa Cruz, let's see how things go for him in the local elections, the elections for the government, for local governments and the state governments. If he still is very strong, then what will happen is that he'll negotiate with Camacho. But he has one thing to negotiate with Camacho.
Mesa.
Who? With Mesa, with Mesa. Camacho has one thing to trade with him, and it's, I'll vote for you if you approve in exchange the way to get a federation in Bolivia. Mm-hmm. And that's calling probably to a national assembly referendum. In order to change the constitution. Yeah, they'll have to approve it through an assembly. It has to be an assembly in order to approve a new constitution.
A constitutional, right. Drafting a new constitution.
Yeah, and that's what probably will be his trade card for Camacho, and he'll probably use it, and he'll probably want to go in that direction, and then he will back him up. He will back up Carlos Mesa in that trade-off. If there's no such trade-off, he won't do it. And if Mesa admits that and gives way to that, then we are in difficult situation, because we'll be in turmoil for the next 3 or 4 years until a new constitution either is approved or not, until there's a federation or not a federation. But that's a long process, not a short process. You know. Yep. Yeah. I think that's what he's going to play. Well, let's see. I don't know. That's my feeling. You know, that's my guess. I haven't heard anything serious from them, but knowing them, that's the only thing they have to in mind, because I don't see Camacho thinking about mining or thinking about hydrocarbons or maybe some agriculture, but I don't see him as a person involved in Bolivian political themes or economic themes. I think he doesn't know these things. You know, I don't think he
No.
can speak about with us for 5 minutes about Bolivian economics. You know, I don't think he can speak 4 minutes about hydrocarbons in Bolivia. You know, because I don't think he knows too much about that. You know, he'll probably say that we export to Brazil and to Argentina, and that those contracts have to be renewed, and that in the last 10 years we haven't found any new reservoirs of gas, and he knows what everybody else knows in Bolivia about this. I don't think he has the capability of speaking or getting in depth in any of
Well,
those issues.
the,
Yeah.
the,
So
the last debate, that's something we didn't talk about, is were the debates that he didn't go. He chickened out. That's
yeah,
he'll give you a different version, but
yeah.
that's what it comes down to, I think.
I think it has two pieces to it. I think he chickened out, but I also think that he didn't care about the La Paz's vote. Because in politics, you can go to a debate and not do it bad. Because I don't know if you watched Pence versus
No, I haven't watched any debates. So no.
Okay, that was a typical debate handled by a good politicians. You know, crafted more than good, crafted. You know, Pence never answered the questions. So there's what's your name, and he said, "Well, I live in Uruguay, and Uruguay is a very nice place to live at because there are a lot of flowers and trees here. And it's a new neighborhood." And said, "Okay, thank you." And next question, you know, next question is, "Do you ever go to Britain?" Well, let me tell you, the bridge in Uruguay is in a very bad shape because you know, two-way deal and blah blah. That's how the whole thing was. You know, he never answered anything, and he wouldn't stop talking. You know, that's a real debater. He's crafted. You know, I think he's boring as hell, but he's a well-crafted politician. He knows exactly what he has to do. He doesn't answer embarrassing questions. He just goes through. Never heard that. He's a deaf guy. You know, he starts talking like he's with headphones. You know. And it was an appalling thing, and but well crafted. You know, he's like you say. You know, he's a politician that's furnished many years of experience. You know, and that's what they do. You know, that's what politicians do in the U.S. and Bolivia and Paraguay. Anywhere you take them to a debate and they just speak whatever they want to speak. You know, you don't need to answer the questions. You just need to speak what they tell you to speak about. So he could have done that. You know, and he has the people that can orient him in order to do that. But basically, I don't think it was that. I think he just didn't want to go to a pass period, you know, because he, you know, it's there's a concept in a legal concept that's called animus. It comes from, in Spanish, it's easier because your animo is what you want to do, you know, it comes from within, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if in English there's such word. No, maybe it's a Latin word that can also be used in English, but I'm not sure of that. The animus is what's within you, and what you do is, if you're in a place and you have the animus of the owner, then you become an owner of property because you act like you are the owner.
Yeah.
And there are certain requisites in order to comply, and if you comply those, then and they entitle you to the ownership of something because you act like the owner, because you have the animus. And I think that that's so important in life. You know, I don't think he has the animus to go to La Paz, because I think that he has the chip in his mind that those are his enemies, that those are people that are not supposed to be with him, and that he has nothing to give them and nothing to offer them, nothing to share with them, you know.
That's an interesting,
it's an animus thing.
That in itself is it's an interesting point to consider. If you recall back in October and November, and there are certain images that were very symbolic where he's, you know, that when he hugs the who's that?
Poncho Rojo.
Yeah, the Poncho Rojo's name I can't remember, but he hugged him at the Cabildo in front of a million people and on national television, and you know, choosing Pumardi as a running mate, although we've also seen how that went with the negotiations and the recordings and
how
stuff.
He treated him.
I would have liked to think at the time, and I did, I gave him the benefit of the doubt, that you can have these, what do they call them, epiphanies or whatever. You can have these life-changing experiences that that cause you to have a 180. I remember a real quick anecdote. I had a teacher in high school that told us, and she must be, I don't know if she's alive anymore, but she was she'd grown up in the United States when there was still segregation, and you know, and before the civil rights movement in the 60s.
Right.
And she told us she was involved in some group at the school of anti, you know, against racism, right? And I remember this thing she told us in the classroom one time when it clicked in her brain, or when she made the realization that after she shook somebody's hand, a Black person's hand, it went in this one point in her life, and she went to the bathroom and she washed her hands after shaking, and that's when this, it, you know, in her mind, she realized what a terrible and awful thing, and that was part of who she was, and that was like the changing moment in her life. And I thought about this too when I saw Camacho, you know, hugging the Poncho Rojo, and she did a complete 180 and became part of, you know, she was part of this group that helped try to combat racism and that I was hoping that something like that would happen with Camacho. Right. But apparently, and you'd have to think, you know, that this impetus that he had to get Evo out of office, and that all over the country is a hero, and historically he'll, in some way, he'll probably be seen as a hero, you know. He is right now, and I think he deserves that title in terms of helping save democracy in Bolivia, at least as it's been known since the early 80s, that he deserves that title. But it's such a juxtaposition to who he is, I guess, you know. And I wish that those images, you know, of hugging the Poncho Rojo and choosing Pumari as a running mate, and him saying that we're united and we're one Bolivia, I wish that was genuine. But you know, what you're getting at is that I don't think that it's not, and that's a shame. It's a real shame.
Yeah, I feel exactly like you feel, because exactly, you know, and I think many people share your feeling. I think most people in Santa Cruz know what he represents, because he was the president of the Comité Cívico. And most people in Santa Cruz know that when he was in La Paz at that juncture, and when he hugged the Poncho Rojo, most people that know that his background questioned, you know, what is he doing there? Is this real or not? Am I seeing something that is the truth, or am I seeing something that is just deceiving?
Sure.
And I think most people share that, and it's very interesting that you're a true Bolivian. I mean, you understand this land so good, you know, because that's all we feel. That's all we felt, you know. And no, it wasn't true. I question one thing about what you said, you know. Did he save us because he's a democratic guy? Or did he save us and fought because he was fighting an Indian? That's something I don't know. Only he knows that.
Whoa. That's,
right?
Huh? You just blew my mind with that question.
Why did he do it, you know? Is he a Democrat or is he a real racist, you know?
Jesus.
Jesus Christ, yes, that's terrible, you know? I'm sorry, but I feel that. It's a big, because you mentioned it, you know, that we have to be thankful. And I think that most people in Bolivia, because most of us are well-doers, you know, most of us feel that, yeah, we have to have a recognition to him because he did it. But if you think for a while, did he do it because he's a Democrat or not? Did he do it because he's a real racist? He just wanted the Indian to get away from here.
I don't think so. I have to give him the benefit of the doubt, because
is he a Democrat?
How could he stand on the stage with the Poncho? I wish I had the
guy's name.
I feel bad just saying a Poncho Rojo.
He had no choice there.
In choosing Pumardi as a running mate, he had a choice.
He had no choice no, because people saw that they were the perfect couple, and at that time he was very tempted of running for whatever.
Okay. And I got you. Yeah, I guess you're right.
But then when Pumari, not Pumari, let's be truthful. Many people in the social nets were saying that the guy who should be the
President was Pumari, right?
That's when he get pissed off, and that's when he did his trick, and that's when he taped him, and that's when he accused Pumari of being corrupt.
Excellent point.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened there. He's just a racist. I'm building up my theory here. He's a real racist. He's a true believer in racism. But yeah, it's a terrible thing. I think that's the sort of thing that's coming out in Santa Cruz. But then again, like I read in longer Santa Cruz of the 1970s. Santa Cruz has a large amount of indigenous people living here. Because if there are 3 million people in Santa Cruz, one time I wrote an article. This was I think at the beginning of the 2000 millennium. I wrote an article because basically what I was showing the article is that there were, I don't recall the numbers at this moment, but in the 1950 census in Santa Cruz, there were 250,000 people, I think, roughly. And in the census of 2001, that had become, I don't know, 28 times. It had multiplied like in 28 times. Yeah. And I wrote an article in La Paz, of course, and I said, could this happen with 250,000 people, right? Mm-hmm. Could 250,000 people multiplies themselves 28 times in this period of time? Yeah. Unless they were rats, it was impossible, right? Unless they were rats, it was impossible, right? the only way to do that is if some of the Highlanders get here. This is indigenous people, and this is exactly what happened in Santa Cruz.
I think it was even less. In the 50s, there's like 50,000 people or something.
Yeah. You're right, but that's the city. That's the city of Santa Cruz. Yeah, and I think the whole department was 250. I'm not quite sure about that, but pretty much. But if you compared it to 2001, it was like 20-fold something. It had changed, and that's not the natural reproduction of human beings, under natural circumstances, and that couldn't have happened in Santa Cruz. So it didn't. So basically, Santa Cruz today is sociologically, anthropologically, it's a very mixed society. There's a lot of indigenous people here that are walking the streets, and it's no longer the land of the landlord. It's no longer the land of this white asses, colitos blancos running around. It's no longer them, but they still subsist and they still think like that, and they're still very racist. But I don't think they represent society as a whole. But look, he has 38% of the vote right now. So it's not that little,
That's another question and there's a lot of people who get behind Camacho and they say, well, I'm voting for Camacho, not because I think, there are a lot of people recognize his faults. And I've seen this comment made by people is that, I'm tired of, not being represented. And it's time for Santa Cruz to have equal representation and to get what we deserve and But I guess you could refute. There's only been two Cruceño presidents, right, in the history?
I think so. Yeah, I think there were 3, but it's
2 or 3. But the point being, when Banzer did anything change with Banzer when he was president? And
no. I think there are two answers to that. Except that I'm tired. I mean, I wouldn't write that on Facebook because I know they don't want to hear you, right? People in Santa Cruz were so small. The number of people in Santa Cruz was so small that you cannot talk about that. Yeah. It's not an issue, How can you be represented in the presidency when the percentage of the people living in Santa Cruz was less than 9 or 8%? It was impossible. The people that were presidents in Bolivia belonged to the departments where most of the people lived, and that's Cochabamba, Santa Cruz, and basically the highlands. That's a dumb point.
But is that the way to get it done? I mean, in terms of the people say, I'm tired of, Senate. Does a president have the power to say, just overhaul the system and say, now Santa Cruz is going to get, we're going to change the national budget and give Santa Cruz more money, and with the stuff with like the IDH and all this, a president can't just shake a stick or a magic wand and say, now Santa Cruz,
It won't
happen. I tend to think that is misguided. I think there's some pride there in saying that, I want to Cruceño to be president because he'll be
Uh-huh.
Cruceño. But the same way for the Benianos, when Áñez became president. Um, but in the end, what it would, okay, it might not be fair to ask this because of the circumstances in the short time period, but what can Janine Áñez really do for Benny is the president, or what has she done? It's.
But I'll answer to your it's a good interrogation. It's a good question. I haven't done a study because it'll take a lot of money and time to do this, but I venture to assure you that in the last 30 years or 40, ever since the 70s, if you study the public investment in Bolivia with numbers, objective numbers, I am certain that you will find that the department that got more money than any other department in Bolivia was Santa Cruz, for many reasons, and just reasons.
Okay.
One of the reasons was that Bolivia had to, there was an economic theory ever since I remember. Bolivia was a mono producer for forever. This country became a country because it was a mining place.
Yeah.
Spaniards came to these lands, not to Santa Cruz, but to Bolivian lands, because there was silver here. No, they didn't come because of the agriculture. Nobody cared what the land here grew. They just cared about where the gold and the silver was, the Spaniards. So during the time of the colony, this was the reason to exist for the Spaniards in Latin America. It was Sucre and Potosí, Mexico, and that was it. And the rest was just there because they needed a port, which was Lima, and that's where they governed because it was more comfortable to be in Lima than to be in Potosí. And it was more comfortable later on to be in Buenos Aires than to be in Potosí. But the reason the Spaniards were here is because of the area of Potosí and Mexico. That's where the mining was. That's where they got money from. So that was the reality of the economy here in Bolivia. That's why the country existed, and that's what most of the people lived. I got out of track, and I forgot what I was answering to you, but that's a political. That's
in terms of the infrastructure and the investment, public investment in Santa Cruz.
So of course, when you had a country like that, then it became independent. And man, Bolivian economists, and later on at the change of the century, then the League of Nations became the institution of the world. Then the United Nations became, then Bretton Woods Agreement, after the war, and the world became a place where economists from Washington would opine over economics in Latin America and so on and so forth. All economists, ever since the end of the war, believed and supported the idea that Bolivia could not be a mono producer of tin. And they were right. They were, of course they were right, because man, this was the 20th century, this country couldn't live only of tin. And if not tin, then silver. And if not silver, then zinc, no, forget it, So there were very important missions from the World Bank and from USAID that came to Bolivia and from the Monetary Fund and studied Bolivia for a while. I forget the name of these missions that they even had. The name of the missions was the name of the chief guy there. So one of the more important missions was probably done in the 50s. And in the 50s, they reached the conclusion that Bolivia had a very powerful future if and only if the lands of Santa Cruz would be appropriately developed. This mission that was led by an American concluded that there had to be roads built because otherwise nothing would happen here. So that's when the decision was taken to build the road from La Paz to Santa Cruz. And that was the beginning of it all. That was the beginning, because after you build the road, you don't need to do anything else. People ride back and forth. People invest, people come, people live. And that was the beginning of the film, and it was the end of the mono production, because that's when Bolivia started developing agriculture, and the agriculture in Santa Cruz effectively. It was good. It's a good land in Santa Cruz to do that.
Sure.
They're competitive. If you look at, they're competitive with Brazil, with Paraguay, and with Argentina in the production of soya and soybeans, you know, and that's pretty good. You know, I admit that that is awfully good. But in order for that to become a reality, there had to be public investment, and the public investment was consciously done in order to promote the development of Santa Cruz. It was consciously, it was a political action that was taken that emerged from those missions of economists that came to Bolivia. And they said, you know, number one and number two is develop Santa Cruz, infrastructure for Santa Cruz. And then after there were people here, loans, right? Make a bank, and then here are funds from the World Bank, from the Monetary Fund, for whatever, and lend all this money to all these guys that want to invest in Santa Cruz. And that's what happened exactly.
Well, I guess the question is it proportionate to the contribution? That's the other gripe that a lot of these, you know, the people who make these claims have, that, oh, Santa Cruz doesn't get, you know, proportionally what we deserve. But then again, if you think so?
Oh yeah, I'm certain.
Well, what I'm thinking of is like, okay,
have you gone right in roads to La Paz or to another department of Santa Cruz?
On the roads, have I traveled?
Have you traveled by road?
Very little. I've traveled around here a bit.
There is no place like Santa Cruz in roads. There is no place. Santa Cruz has the best roads of all the other departments. Yes. I don't know what the argument is, but it is the best place.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in other respects, you know, I don't know what you can talk about. Museums or schools or universities, or, you know, because beyond roads, there's more to it in terms of infrastructure, education, and blah blah blah. And I don't know what I'm kind of thinking of is like, you've seen the movie The Hunger Games, right? With the Capitol and the are you familiar with the story of the Hunger Games?
No, I don't think I remember that.
It's an let's just call it an alternate reality or world where there's like a capital, and the capital has all the money and the wealth, and then there's the provinces, and they're all poor and underdeveloped.
I think I've seen a movie. And so it's like a view to the future, right?
Well, there's it's I don't know if you call it science fiction or fantasy, but yeah, kind of. Or the other, I don't know, if, like look at a place like Dubai. You know, it's part of the United Arab Emirates, and this you go in Dubai and it's like being in the future, and then you travel 20 minutes outside of Dubai and there's people living in shacks, you know, like in. But the point I'm making is, if it was proportionate, Santa Cruz is like 2/3 of the, or no, I'm sorry, 1/3 of the economy, of the Bolivian economy, and what you might get is is that really possible without leaving other areas in abject poverty? I don't know. You say it's more so that Santa Cruz receives more than
it has received more
than it contributes, more than the rest, but more than. Is it proportionate to what Santa Cruz offers or produces, I guess?
I think per capita, the public investment has been more in the last 40 years towards Santa Cruz. And I think that's basically the authorship of this economist that came to Bolivia and proposed this policy since the 70s. And after the 70s, Santa Cruz became very important in politics, even though they don't recognize that, because that's a second analysis. This is an analysis of a political scientist. I don't know if all, but definitely more than 90% of the ministers of agriculture were from Santa Cruz ever since the 70s. Whichever party was in government would put somebody that handled the agro business from Santa Cruz. That was like a requirement. Yeah, that was like a requirement, you know. But that meant a lot of money. It wasn't just an administrative post, because these guys would bring money to Santa Cruz through the bank, through loans, through whatever investments, and it became, no, I'm certain that public investment was very big in the last 40 years, and it was much more in Santa Cruz per capita than the rest of the departments. I'm certain if somebody would do the study, it's an easy conclusion to reach that. I've seen most of those years, because I worked since the 80s, and since the 80s, it was that way.
Debunk that argument, I guess.
Yeah. Oh no, by far. And I did talk about this at a time in the radio here in a radio station with what's his name, Tumpa, yeah. And nah, they would never admit that, of course. Yeah, it's absurd to talk with people like that because they don't understand reasoning, logical reasoning. It was logical for that to happen, because otherwise this department wouldn't exist if there was no roads, if there were basically roads, and after that, money in order to invest in agriculture. And from the 1990s on, hydrocarbons.
Right.
The capitalization was basically in favor of Santa Cruz. And it was good. It happened. And the results are good. A lot of money came in Santa Cruz as a result of that. So yes, this is a land that became what it became in large part, not only, but in large part because there were policies from the central government for that to happen. Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to touch on? We've gone for
yeah, we've spoken a lot, and I think it was interesting. At least we had a good time.
Sure we did.
And I certainly did, and it was interesting. And I hope that people that follow us can also share this feeling. We're close to the elections, and my feeling is that we spoke about more than an hour. This is the route that Mr. Camacho is taking for the future, and I hope I'm wrong, but we'll just see what's going to happen there. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Ernesto. Thank you, everybody.
Well,
happy weekend, and we will have to see when we can do the next show in Spanish, according to the rules about what you can, how political you can be before an election. We'll talk about that off camera.
We'll talk about that. Okay. All right. Have a good weekend. Enjoy.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.